Thank you, George. Okay, so okay, did you guys ended like here, right? Or past it? Okay, yeah. So obviously these dates are wrong. But this general layout of the class should be correct. You just need a 70% to pass, and if you show up to class, I do most of the stuff. So if you could just copy what I do, then you should be good. Um, Again, this is a pretty like lenient class. We don't, you have other classes, so we don't want you to be like stressed out about this. We just want you all to enjoy the process of learning how to CAD. So hopefully you enjoy. Again, you do have a final, but don't worry too much. It's very lenient. If you do have CAD experience, like 5 design features is pretty chill. I worked on a battle bot this weekend and I designed the chassis and it had like 70 or 80 design features. So 5 should be pretty chill. Yeah. Past finals, if y'all didn't see, some of these people came in here with no CAD experience, and in the end, they were able to make stuff like this. Um, this usually means they spent a lot of time on their final, and if you have the time, I encourage you to do that. But again, I understand that you have lives outside of this class and other classes that actually count towards your GPA. So I would prioritize those so you don't like fail classes and stuff. But if you have time and you can make cool stuff, that is also appreciated. But yeah, did everyone get an Autodesk account? No one's having issues there. Oh wait, yeah, because the website's down. Okay, basically, you usually create an Autodesk account with your Purdue email. If you don't use your Purdue email, it'll be harder to prove that you're a student and you won't get your license for free. So if when you sign up, when the servers are back up, please use your Purdue email. Um, Sometimes they'll want extra verification. So after you install Fusion and you log in, it'll tell you you have a free trial. Um, you'll have to like do like more authentication to prove that you're a student. So when that happens, there is a link here to this link. I'm signed out. You should sign in and then you can verify that you're a Purdue student here. I might have to, oh, come on. Okay, so it should greet you with a bunch of the other Autodesk softwares. We're focusing on Fusion. If you hit select, great, okay. But here it usually will ask you for more information. Most of it is here. They'll ask you where like Purdue is. So their address is 610 Purdue Mall. They'll ask you for our website, which is just purdue.edu, and maybe a couple other things. But if you confirm all those things, and then sometimes you have to log out and log back into your Fusion on your application, your free trial should go away. But if it doesn't, I wouldn't worry too much. As long as like Autodesk in the browser says that you have like the education license, you're good. Sometimes it doesn't update on the application itself. but then once the free trial elapses, then it just goes away and then it just says you can do stuff. I don't know why, but sometimes that does it. Or sometimes uninstalling and reinstalling Fusion works. But if you don't want to go through that headache, then you can just like do it later or something. But yeah, I'm assuming most of you haven't gotten Fusion installed and running yet, right? Or is it mostly just people with Macs? Okay, raise your hand if you don't have Fusion installed yet. Okay, is it because Mac? Yeah, okay. Did the installer that I sent not work? You probably. Okay, yeah, that's what happens when the installer is old. Yeah, I will. I'll send a new installer when I get it, or I'll let everyone know when AutoGuess servers are back up. Um, but yeah, I apologize for all this chaos. Um, but yeah. Okay, does anyone have any questions about anything? Did I go over the attendance policy yet? No. Okay. So this attendance policy is structured just so we can help with retention. Again, we understand that everyone has, stuff outside of this class, and that usually takes priority, like exams and sometimes other club stuff. So the attendance policy is no unexcused absences. So if you're not going to be here for whatever reason, you basically have to let us know with the Google form, and that just helps track like who's still engaged with the course because it's hard for us to tell who's like just busy and not here today and who's just not coming back. So if you guys let us know when you're not going to be here, that'd be very helpful, or else I'll be sending emails saying like, oh, you're going to get dropped from the class and stuff like that. And I assume you don't want emails like that. So please fill out the forms. An incentive to fill out the form is I've said that if we can get over 90% of like attendance, and that includes unexcused absences, I'll bring food and we can have like a little party on the last day of class. So if everyone continues to fill out those forms, I'll bring food, and I really want to. So I think on the first attendance one, um, it asks for food allergies, so I can know if anyone's allergic to anything. But yes, please fill out those forms. You have a food incentive to fill them out and an incentive to not get dropped from this class. So yeah, please fill them out. Um, Yes, so I just posted the forms if you haven't filled them out already. They should be under resources in the Discord. Also, this whole class is conducted over Discord, so if you're wondering where the Brightspace is, there doesn't really exist. It doesn't really exist. I know other milestones classes usually run on Brightspace, but the reason why I run over Discord is because every time the session ends, we have to kick everyone out and then put new people in. So you'll lose all the resources that we give you in this class if you are in a Brightspace. So you can reference this like whenever you leave this class, and you'll have access to me and the TAs for until you know you delete Discord or something. But yeah, if you ever have any questions, feel free to ask in general or homework help. It's usually I'll get to you in a second. It's usually very great if you ask the question here because other people might be having similar questions, but they might be like too scared to ask or something. So if you um, ask a question and we give them, or if we give you a good answer, it may be helpful for other people. I've also experienced times where other students help each other in here, which is really awesome to see. So if you have any questions, feel free to put it there. If you want, you can also DM one of us, and we're more than happy to help. But yeah, we are your resource to use. So if you have any questions, please reach out because yeah, we all want you to pass, and like I'll be honest, it's not that hard to pass. So yeah, the main reason people don't pass this class is they stop showing up and stop turning things in. again, we do most of the demos in class, and the homework is structured around the knowledge learned from those demos. So technically, homework's independent. Lots of people finish homework in class. If they don't finish in class, it's usually pretty straightforward outside of class. So yeah, and then again, you can ask questions. So yeah, any questions on the attendance policy and turning stuff in? Oh, for due dates, all the homework is due right before the next class. So you have 1 week to do everything. Um, for the submissions, it's all on Google Forms. So if you submit your assignments, basically we want screenshots of all the work you did. It's easiest just to take a screenshot of your whole screen. If you look in the rubric, we're talking about timelines. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but we're going to want to be able to see your timelines week 2 and past that. The timeline just kind of explains how we or how you design something. So I can kind of read the timeline and understand your process. So if it's not there, it becomes harder for me to see what you did. And for some demos, it's kind of essential that you copy what I did, just so you know, just so I know that you know how to use the tools. So yeah, I'll show you the timeline in a moment, but don't just send like a tiny screenshot of your model because you might lose points. But yeah, any other questions? I know you had a question back there. Oh, she's good? Okay, cool. Yeah, I apologize for the chaos, but hopefully other weeks won't be as bad. Okay. So I'm assuming we're all here now. Yes. All right, sweet. Okay, so I'm assuming you are all here to learn CAD. If you're confused on what CAD is, it stands for Computer Aided Design. Basically, in the past, they used to have rooms of engineers and other designers with a bunch of paper on these boards. I don't know if I have a photo. I don't. But it's like rooms of engineers and they would design stuff on paper, right? And obviously, it's very tedious. It's a very labor-intensive process to design stuff. But some smart dude at MIT designed a program on a computer that allows you to design stuff. And over time, these programs got more and more advanced. Computers got better and better to the point where you can CAD stuff on like your iPad. Obviously, we're using our laptops today, but CAD has become a very powerful program for us students and engineers. It does more than just design stuff as well. If you're unfamiliar with some of these CAD programs, they're usually a big package that does more than just designing. So you can do obviously, designing, but then you can also do simulations and other fun stuff like that. If you're interested in stuff like simulations and finite element analysis, we have an FEA course. My roommate actually teaches that, and he's very good at what he does. So yeah, little plug for FEA. But Fusion has all these capabilities, which is one reason why we teach it. And it's also cloud-based. So it's a little bit easier for file sharing, which can be helpful in group projects. So if you ever have a group project and you want to work with people on a design, Fusion's very good for that. It also offers CAM, which is computer aided manufacturing. Basically, you can take your model in Fusion and then you can program a CNC machine like a mill or a lathe to make your part. So it's a nice integration if anyone kind of wanted to move towards the manufacturing side. But yeah, for this class, we're only really focusing on the modeling part. We're also going to be doing rendering, which is something that Fusion can do as well. But yeah, that's mostly the scope of this class. So yes. Obviously, we're using Fusion, but there are many, many other CAD softwares out there. A lot of them have very similar like function, but like the buttons are different. So I think for the most part, whatever you learn from this class can be translated to other CAD programs, which is really nice. I actually started my CAD journey in SolidWorks, but it didn't take very long for me to pick up Fusion because functionally they're pretty similar. It's just the buttons are in different places or they're named different things. So that just takes a little bit of learning, but yeah, you should be able to use most other programs after this. Okay, so this is our first assignment. It's just some basic building blocks. So for those of you who have Fusion installed, feel free to open it now. For those who don't have it installed yet because of the like AWS thing, I encourage you to follow along, but I'm sorry that it's not working right now. I'll see if I can find another newer installer to send to you all later. But yes, all of these classes are recorded, so again, you can watch them later. But yeah, when you enter Fusion, if it's your first time, I think it'll ask you to create a hub. The hub is basically just like your Google Drive, and it asks you to create a name for it. You can kind of name it whatever you want. You know, I'd encourage if it was school appropriate, but it is your hub, so you can kind of name it whatever. Um, oh, I guess a little inspiration. At the end of this class, everything I teach you will technically allow you to do something like this. This is mostly like extrudes and revolves and sweeps. So if it opens, that would be pretty awesome. This is what I was working on last week for toy design. If you have heard of that class, it's pretty cool. But these are mostly extrudes and revolves. So, the basic concepts that we're teaching you today kind of go pretty far. So yeah, I think this is a sweep, but most of this is just extrudes. So you should be able to CAD like 80% of this after today from a technical standpoint. Yeah. Not saying that this is your homework. Please don't do this for your homework. Okay, anyways. In your hub, wow, this is super laggy. Open, please. Oh, nice. Okay, in your hub, awesome. Fusion crashed. Okay, so in your hub, I encourage you to create a folder. Sometimes people, or I think it's a project. Some people put their files in default project and then they start reducing their pieces. So I encourage you to create your own project. I normally name it um, like milestones class or something. There we go. Yeah, so there's a new project button up here. I've already created a project, and then in there you can add folders and stuff like that. Obviously, I have several folders because I've taught this class a couple times. But yeah. Okay, cool. Also, who doesn't have a mouse today? Oh boy. Okay, I have one mouse. I will give up my mouse, but I encourage you all to bring mice to class. Just because okay, sorry, we're unlucky today. Um, If you bring a mouse, it typically makes CAD easier. Um, so yes. Okay. So much fun. I wish I had more mics. Maybe I should bring more. Okay. So raise your hand if you're not at this point in Fusion where you just kind of have a blank document. Okay, it's because you have a Mac, right? Is it because you have a Mac?
Should we talk about the info session this week, this Thursday, or come to origin?
What?
Should we talk about like Jason's info session with origin this Thursday?
Sure, if you want to.
Say
Like
yes,
flip you for them.
You guys remember how I talked about how we're working it with ASME, like how they have their own company like sponsors and everything. So this week we actually had an info session with Blue Origin, an aerospace company, and they'll be, I'm not sure if they'll be accepting resumes, but you can come up, feel free to come up with resume. Sure, why not? They will take your resumes and have a good talk with the recruiters. If anybody's like interested in like space or stuff, feel free to come over, and they'll be more than happy to talk to you and like see what you guys have to offer. So keep that in mind.
Okay, did your thing end up fixing itself? We love internet breaking. I know, I know. I might just let it expire just so I can show people how it works. But okay, so unfortunately some people aren't here, but I think it's mostly because it's a server issue. So feel free to just listen along or watch along. Basically, this is your primary workspace in Fusion. Um, Up here, we usually call it the toolbar, which is where, all these icons are for the different functions you can utilize. Down here on the bottom is the timeline. So, again, it kind of tells me what you did and what order you did things. So please make sure that's in your homework submissions. On the left here is the data panel. This is where you normally have all your files and stuff like that. Obviously, this folder is empty, so it's just gray. But if it's ever in your way, there's this button up here where you can hide the data panel, and obviously you can open it again when you press the same button. But yeah, this is your main workspace. If you don't have a mouse, which I saw a lot of people don't, the way you kind of navigate around is the view cube up here. You can kind of hold down and you can orbit around the workspace. I think there's also like panning and stuff like that down here. If you do have a mouse, I forget the exact mouse controls because I changed them. But I think it's like, yeah, so the reason why you want a mouse is because you need the center button on the scroll wheel. I think it's like you hold it down and then it pans like left and right, and then if you hold shift and then you use the middle button, it allows you to orbit. I changed the mouse controls to SolidWorks because that's what I first learned on. But yeah, it's very useful to have a mouse. For me, I actually just my laptop has a touch screen, so that's what I use a lot, which is why I can give my mouse away. But yes, I encourage you to bring a mouse if you don't have one. It'll usually make your CAD experience more pleasant. But yes, if your Fusion doesn't have this kind of grid layout like mine, you can go down here. There's a layout grid that you can hide and show. I typically like leaving it on, but yeah. Anyways, let's just get into assignment 1. Pretty basic stuff. You can see here, there's a couple building blocks that we're going to create. For this assignment, we're only going to be using extrudes. So an extrude is basically taking a 2D profile and just stretching it into a 3D space, right? So typically in the CAD software, you start with something 2D and then you apply some tool to make it 3D, if that makes sense. So for this one, we're just doing extrudes. There's a couple ways you can go about doing this, mainly for the bridge, but I'll get there. The cube and the cylinder are pretty simple, so let's just start with that. I'm going to do a cube. To create a sketch, you just click up here. There's a create sketch button. This is basically what you're going to do 90% of the time when you CAD stuff. You always want to create a sketch, and then you select a plane. So at the beginning, it gives you 3 different planes that you can work from, but then when you create more stuff, like once we create our cube, you can also reference those spaces that you've created. So right now there's just 3 because they just gives you an origin and XYZ, but I'll show you in a little bit that you can reference other stuff because it can be useful. So I'm just going to click this, and then you see the toolbar changes to the sketch toolbar. I want to create a cube, so I'm going to create a rectangle. I typically like making a center rectangle because that just means it's centered from wherever I want to create it. Best practice or good practice in CAD is usually basing all your dimensions and stuff off the origin. So you can see there's like this dot in the middle of the screen. That's the origin. Obviously, I'm going to deviate a little bit from that today because we're making 3 models in one like part. But for the first one, I'm going to do it like, in my opinion, like the correct way. Obviously, you can like not do that if you really want to, but it's typically easier for constraining. So just make your rectangle. You can see like the outer rectangle or the outer edges on the rectangle are blue. So blue on like lines and curves means it's undefined, right? And when it's undefined, you can kind of stretch it in like space. Oh wow, I accidentally just made a square perfectly. Okay, let's fix that. So yeah, you should be able to like move all around because it's not constrained. We haven't told it to do anything. But it's referencing to the origin, right? So you can see like I can't move this rectangle side to side, which is a good thing. That means we only need to apply 2 constraints to make it fully defined, right? So to add a constraint, today we're just mainly doing dimensional constraints. So there's the sketch dimension tool. You can click on a line or a curve or 2 lines. Click on 2 lines, you can get an angle, but we're not really doing that right now. And then you can set some dimension. In terms of units for this class, I don't really care what units you CAD in. I think there's only one assignment where like the numbers on what I do matter. So if you're trying to copy me, but instead of 100, you do like 120, that's totally chill. Yeah, I will make sure to like specify when you should be copying my dimensions. But for the most part, I'm not going to because you can do whatever you want. But yeah. So now that I have this 100, because it's a square, I'm going to make this 100 as well. We're going to be talking about geometric constraints next week. So like normally I would make these 2 lines reference each other and I'd say like they're equal to each other if I want a square, but I'm just doing 2 100s today, if that makes sense. Yeah. Who's not here yet? I know I'm going slow, but this is like very fundamental, so I want to make sure you all like know this very well because this is like what you're going to be doing most of the time. Cool. All right. So, wow, we have a square. This is crazy. I'm going to press finish sketch because it looks very square-like and done to me. You can see here if I spin around, it's just flat, right? To make it 3D, we're going to use the extrude function. One nice thing about Fusion, another reason why we like teaching it, is that a lot of the buttons are very like big and colorful, and if you hover over them, it gives you like a visual example of what it does. So you can see here, like this blue section is the plane, and then you can see they're extruding apart, right? So we're going to do that as well. Fusion auto selects a plane in this case, but if it doesn't, you just click on the areas where you want it to be extruded. The start is basically where you want the extrusion to start. Typically, if you placed your plane in the correct area, it's just going to be profile plane, but sometimes you want it to extrude offset from it, or extrude from like another face that you're referencing. So those are two good options. I use that a lot, but today we're just doing profile plane. For the direction, sometimes I like to do symmetric or two sides, depending if you want it to be asymmetric. But today I'm just doing one side. Basically, it'll just go from this face in one direction. A lot of these like terms are pretty self-explanatory, so yeah. For the extent type, we're doing distance because it's like a manual number, but you can also have it extrude to like other objects. So, if it's a curved surface, you can select like an object and then it'll extrude up to that curve. So it's usually pretty nice. And then through all is just like to the farthest thing in your model from wherever their plane is. So yeah, sometimes it's good if you want to cut holes. So yeah, I'm going to do distance because all the other edges are 100. I'm going to do this as 100 as well. And then wow, we have a cube. It's pretty crazy. I'm assuming everyone's following because I'm going, yeah. Okay, sweet. We good? Okay, so I'll do the next one a little bit faster now. Hopefully you guys don't fall asleep. Um, but we're going to do the cylinder next. Again, that's just a circle and then an extrusion. You can see when I press sketch, it'll give the three planes from the origin like as an option, but you can also select, this face or that one, right? All these faces from the cube. So I'm just going to select one of these cube faces, and then I'm going to draw a cylinder. Again, I'm deviating away from like best practices now just because we typically don't model more than one part in the same like document, but this is kind of for demonstration purposes. And then I'll kind of explain why, right? So before we had like the center circle or center rectangle on the origin. If we do a circle out here in some arbitrary space, right? And then I dimensioned it, so 100. The size of this circle is obviously not ever going to change now, similar to that rectangle, but it's still blue. And the reason is because you can drag it in free space because it's not constrained from the origin. And when you do that, you have to add more constraints. So you have to be like, oh, the center of the circle is like this far from the origin in like the X direction. And then it's also like this far in like the Y direction, right? So now that I've specified these two extra dimensions, this is fully defined. Again, you can do this if you really want to, but it's usually easier and best practice to just put your stuff on the origin. It usually like centers all your parts when you make an assembly, makes it a little bit nicer, and it just avoids these random arbitrary numbers. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. The other thing I didn't really note is that like closed bodies are kind of highlighted in blue. You can see, well, it might be hard to see on the projector, but if you look at your screen, inside the circle, it's kind of highlighted blue. That means it's, closed, right? So for example, let's say I have like this arbitrary triangle out here, but then like, I may have misclicked and like these two lines are close to each other, but they're not quite touching, right? It's basically a triangle, but you can see it's not highlighted blue, and it's because it's not closed. The only way to fix that is by, making sure it's closed. And you see when I joined those 2 points, it became highlighted blue. So if you're ever wondering, like, why isn't my thing allowing me to select it for an extrusion? It's usually because your body or sketch isn't closed. So keep that in mind. Anyways, I'm going to finish this sketch, and then I'm going to extrude this just like before. I'm just going to use some different tools just so you kind of can see how it works. So for the profile or for the direction, I'm going to do it as symmetric. The distance, I believe, is the distance from one side. So if you want the thing to be, let's say you want this to be 200, but you're doing a symmetric extrusion, you have to do 200 divided by 2. In this case, it's just 100. So 200 divided by 2. Each side is extruded 100 millimeters. Obviously, if you look at the sketch in the timeline, you can see it's referencing this plane right here. So when I extrude 100 in both directions, it made it like flat on the same height as this. So if you did the exact same thing as me, then it should look like this. But again, if your numbers are different, that's fine. Okay, we good? Awesome. Okay, so for the last one, there's a couple different options on how you can do this. Obviously, like CAD is kind of like, or it's similar to writing in which everyone has like their different style, right? Some people have preferences to certain tools. Um, so there are technically a couple ways you can do this, right? You can make a rectangular prism that's very similar to this cube and then cut out a semicircle, or you can make it all at the same time. Um, the, the wow, I can't talk today. Depending on what you're designing, one way might be better than the other. Like if that, arch changes a lot, maybe it's better if it's something else. Considering that it's just a simple block, I'm going to do it all at the same time, but there is like different ways of doing this, if that makes sense. So yeah. For this, I'm just going to create another sketch. I'm going to reference this plane, and then and this time I'm going to reference the origin and create this rectangle here. You can see these two lines are defined because they're already connected to the origin. Going to specify some heights and lengths, and then boom, that looks good. So we have our rectangle. Now we want that circle. We're going to add a circle onto this rectangle. You can kind of see here that if I run along this line, it'll kind of snap at certain places. Sometimes it snaps to the grid, but there's this point here with where it snaps, where there's a triangle above it. The triangle is like the symbol for the midpoint. So that means my mouse is currently in the middle of that line. So I want this to be centered, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to add some dimension, and then boom. So you see here, we have a couple of different closed loops. I just want to trim it away so it's nice and clean. So I'm going to cut this side of the circle away and then like this center line. And you'll see some stuff will change. So to do that, there's this scissor tool or the trim tool. The hotkey is T for anyone who's interested. But you can either like hold down left click and then run your mouse over the line that you want to cut, like this one, or you can click on the line that you want to delete. You can see here, like the red section is what goes away, and then the blue section is what it keeps. So it usually just trims the line or the circle to the next like nearest vertice or point. So yeah, when we do that, you can see the circle turns blue, right? And it's because it was midpoint to that line initially, but we just deleted that line. So now it only moves, it can move side to side, which is obviously not what we really want in this scenario. To fix that, you could add a dimensional constraint and make sure like both of these are the same length by doing some math. But we can make Fusion do some of the math for us. This is kind of a sneak peek into week 2, but over here with all these red tools, there's a bunch of geometric constraints. In this case, to center this, it would be ideal if these two lines were equal to each other. So we can just use this equal tool up here and then select them, and then boom, fully constrained. Cool. All right, sweet. I'm going to finish this. Obviously, this sketch is right on this face. So when I go to extrude it, I can set the start to be like an offset. So it's moving a little bit away from the part. So let's do like 20 or something like that. You can see the arrow moved. And then when I apply a distance, like that, let's just do 100. You can see here, like there's a gap between the profile that we just created and the actual solid body. So that's kind of how the offset function works. Everyone understanding this? Okay, cool. I know for a lot of people who know how to CAD, this is really basic stuff. But if you were brushing up on stuff like constraining at the origin and stuff like that, I hope that's useful. But yeah, anyways, we're basically done with this. All the models are complete. In this photo, you can see it's nice and colorful. So to add that, we can add appearances. I typically just press A to open the appearance library. This thing pops up on the side, and then you can start applying them. So Fusion has a bunch of like appearances like installed when you get the program, and then you can kind of select them. So down here, you can see there's a bunch of different options. I usually go for paint, I think, and then I use glossy, but that's just a preference. When I ask you to assign an appearance on these parts, depending on the assignment, please don't do it as gray, because if it's gray, I'm just going to assume you didn't do it, right? All the models come out as gray. So if you choose a nice colorful color, it'll be painfully obvious to me that I can't take points away from you. So when you apply an appearance, please make sure it's not like gray or like black or something. Black, I will probably be able to tell, but if you want to be safe, just make it colorful, please. But yeah. For stuff like this, or for the appearances, you typically have to download them. They're like maybe a couple megabytes. But once you download them, you just drag and drop to the body that you want. So say I want this to be blue, this to be green or something, and then like this one to be red. And then boom, we have colors. Good. Sweet. I know like this first assignment for a lot of users or a lot of students is slow, but I just want to make sure we have like pretty strong fundamentals because this class tends to ramp up pretty quick. Okay. Raise your hand if you're not here yet, under the assumption. Okay, that's okay. Oh, awesome. Okay, cool. Yeah,
Sometimes that's just the best way, is just to throw it on there. We don't circumvent it.
Again, if you're interested on what I'm grading, there's all the rubrics. So if you're wondering what my deductive accounts for, that would be
Oh, wait, actually, so you have been installed. So whichever one, can you actually email that to me? And I'll.
Thank you so much. All right, so I assume everyone's good here. I'm just gonna move on to the next assignment. Yes. Wait, David. Are we good? Okay, like 2 minutes? Okay. Okay, yeah. So some people are asking about some assignment submissions. Please submit them all at the same time because when I go and grade them, I grade every single like form submission. So if you submit it twice, then I have to grade twice. Because sometimes it's harder for me to tell who submitted more than once. So just do it all at the same time. If you're not done yet, then just wait and then submit it when it's done. Yeah.
You want to screenshot this item, right?
Yeah.
Not the file.
Yeah. So it should just be like. So I can see this. Okay, yeah, I'll just do like a demo if y'all are confused. So when I screenshot, I want to see the model, obviously, but then I want to see the timeline. So at the minimum, your stuff should look like this at the minimum. But it's usually just easier just to submit the whole screenshot. But yeah. Okay. So it's almost 7 now, so hopefully we'll get everything in. Okay. Shit. Okay. So next assignment is the Purdue hammer. I'm going to go a little bit faster this time. So again, if I'm going a bit too fast, just bear with me because you can rewatch it later, but hopefully it's at a good speed. Anyways, I've created a new document here. I've opened it. There's a couple ways we could go about doing this, right? We could make a cylinder here, make this rectangular prism, and then another cylinder on top. But what I'm going to do is I'm only going to make 2 different features, one extrusion and then one rectangular prism, right? So we're going to be a little bit clever with some offsets and stuff like that to make that happen. So I'm going to create a sketch here, make a circle from the origin, add a dimension, and then I'm going to extrude it. Also, if you're curious, the hotkey for extrusion is just E, so that might save you some time. I'm going to extrude it like a lot more. Okay, cool. We have our cylinder here. I'm going to create a sketch, and this time I'm going to reference the top of the cylinder so you can see the origin's way down there. I'm going to reference this spot up here. I'm going to create a center rectangle because I want the hammerhead to be centered on the circle. Adding some more dimensions. Okay, so who's not here yet? Okay. Yes. Okay, so now that you're here, I'm going to create that extrusion. You can see here, obviously, I selected the top plane. So when I select the extrusion, in this case, maybe I should be going this way. You can see there's no like bump at the top, right? And then that's where I'm going to use this offset. I think in this case it has to be negative because the initial arrow is going upwards. So if I do like negative 20, maybe not 300, negative 30, you can see there's that bump there. Let's make this a little thinner. And boom. So again, there's more than one way of doing this. This is maybe my personal preference, but there are other ways and they're not wrong. So if you did it another way, that's perfectly fine. The reason why I did that is just so that there's less like clutter on the bottom. There's only two features, like two sketches and two features, right? Obviously, you can do it other ways, but yeah, that's how I did it. The last thing for this is adding fillets to all the corners. So a fillet is basically just a little round thing that you can go on edges and stuff like that. To add that, it would be over here. The other option for like an edge thing is a chamfer. So a chamfer is like a straight cut. Depending on your application, you may want to use one or the other. When we talk about 3D printing later, I tend to favor chamfers over fillets for a lot of things, but I can explain that in like future weeks. But for this model, we want it to be nice and round, so we're going to do a fillet, and we're not printing this, so it's perfectly fine. So to select edges, you can select edges and faces. So in this case, I want like all 4 of these edges to be filleted. So instead of clicking every single edge, I can just click on the face. And then, I'm going to do that here as well. You can specify some radius. I don't know, maybe more. Okay. Obviously, if the number you select goes higher, it will round it more. You can see here I forgot to do some of these. To add more to your fillet, you can hold down Control. Yeah, I think it should be Control for Mac as well. But you hold down Control, and then you can select additional edges, like that. The other thing you can do in the fillet tool, which is kind of interesting, and I think it's kind of unique to Fusion, is that you can have multiple fillet radii in the same like fillet on your timeline. So, like for example, like I want these two. Let's do like this and that as like 15. Then you can add like another selection set, and then let's add these. You don't have to do what I'm doing now. I'm just showing you some more functionality. And then if we set this to like 30, you can see like it'll fillet this one and this one at the same time, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, this should be it for assignment 2. So yeah. Anyone confused on the fillet tool? It's pretty fun. It makes things nice and round. Okay. All right. So we only have about 20 more minutes to get the last assignment done and explaining the homework. So I'm going to speed run this a little bit. Again, it's recorded, so don't worry too much. So for the next assignment, or the last assignment of the day, we're going to be using the revolve tool. So it's similar to the extrude tool where you create a 2D sketch. I don't know if you've done calculus. I think it's calculus 2 when they do like the disc and washer stuff. The disc and washer stuff is like basically what we're doing, but in Fusion. So we're taking this 2D profile and then we're copying it like a bunch of times in a circle until we get our nice round object. So we're basically going to create this profile of like a quarter of a game piece, and then we're going to revolve it around the center axis. So making a sketch here, selecting a plane, and then I'm going to start drawing. So you can see here there's some lines, vertical and horizontal. I'm going to go like this. And then I'm going to create a circle here. The shortcut for circle is C if you're curious. And then I'm going to create another line and then an arc here. So line and then an arc. So oops. I can do maybe a 3-point arc right here. I got 2 lines, selecting start and end, and we have this here. So personally, what I like to do is I just kind of like throwing out a bunch of lines and circles and then dimensioning them. But if you like to go one feature at a time, it's totally cool. You can see here this piece looks quite demented, so let's start fixing it. Right here, you want this curve to be smooth, like have a smooth transition to this line. So another sneak peek for week 2, we're going to use a tangency constraint. So this makes it so the transition will be nice and smooth. I'm going to select the line in the circle. There we go. And then I'm going to add one more line here to close it, and then I'm going to trim away the rest of the circle. So trim, looking a little bit better. And then now I'm going to add some dimensional constraints. So 15, 30. This radius here. This distance. And then I think you should be able to do angle. So if you haven't done angle yet, you can take two lines that aren't parallel to each other and click on both of them in the sketch dimension, and then you can specify an angle. Yeah. I know I went kind of fast there, so I'm going to walk around. But once you're finished, your sketch should be, or all the lines in your sketch should be fully black. Because maybe I went a little too fast. Okay, so to create the profile, I'm gonna kind of create like a big U here. So vertical lines here. I'm then gonna create this circle here. And then to connect this point and the end of the circle, I'm going to use a combination of lines and arcs. So I'm going to make a line going from the circle out to here. And then if I go under create and then arc, there's the 3-point arc. This allows you to select a start of the arc and then an end of the arc and then the radius. So I can do that. And then you can see you need another vertical line here to make the trim properly. If you don't add the vertical line and you trim this, it's going to look like this, right? And you don't really want that. So you have to tell it to end the trim here by adding a vertical line and then trimming it. So when I trim away, there's still this vertical area, and then I can trim this little piece away as well. And then to make this nice and smooth, again, we're using the tangent constraint there, and then the edge of the circle. And then we have our game piece. I'm going to walk around again.
So didn't you already do that? I did, but I saw a lot of people still section, so that's what I thought it was critical. I was doing doing it my last day. I'm paying attention, I thought I was at least.
So this is a little thing we're going to talk about next week. But basically, when you're creating geometric constraints, okay, this is a pretty like important topic, so I hope you all listen to this. But I'm going to talk about it again next week. But oh wait, it's easier when I do a different example. So you can see I'm going to draw two lines, and they're both in different directions, right? These are very like arbitrary lines. But let's say in my mind, I want both of these lines to be horizontal, right? This line, like on the top, is more closer to horizontal, and then this one is more closer to vertical, right? Fusion has a horizontal vertical tool where you can make lines horizontal or vertical, but Fusion is going to assume the one closest to it is the one that you want, right? So I want both of these to be horizontal, but if I use this tool and I select this to be horizontal, that's right. But because this one's closer to vertical, that'll go vertical, right? And this applies to all constraints. So I saw some people had like their arc like this, right? And then their line was like this. You can see like this being tangent to this side of the circle is easier for like Fusion. So if I apply a tangent constraint, it'll do that instead of looping it nicely the way like it was here, right? So to fix that, you want to undo the constraint, and then you kind of have to like nudge Fusion in the right direction. So if you move this point here, it's more closer to this side of the tangent line for the circle than before. So if I apply the constraint again, then it's the way I want it. So I'm going to go over this again next week, but keep this in mind because it's a pretty important thing, because if it's not in the right place, it'll be doing the wrong thing and then you'll get like annoyed and sad. So yeah. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Again, I'm going to be talking about it next week because next week is mostly geometric constraints. So it's mostly a sneak preview for next week. But yeah. Okay, we have 7 minutes, so I'm going to go faster. Hopefully you have this fully constrained like this, but if not, it's probably fine. This is just best practice before you exit a sketch that it's fully constrained, just so there's nothing arbitrary about your design. But yeah. So now that I have this finished sketch, you can see again this profile is blue. I'm gonna create a revolve instead of an extrude, so it's right next to it. It'll ask you to select an axis. You want to make sure you select the right one. Obviously, if you select the wrong one, then your game piece is gonna look weird. Like, this isn't really what we're intending for. But if you select the right axis, it should look like a game piece. But yeah, the last thing for this assignment is adding text at the bottom. So what you want to do, you want to create a sketch on the bottom face, and then you can go create text. You can create either a text box or text along like a line or something like that. I'm just going to create a text box. But yeah. Bro, what the heck? Okay. Okay. Obviously, you can change like the height and stuff like that and the font. I'm just gonna leave it as is. But I have this here. I'm gonna exit the sketch, and then I'm gonna extrude the letters. So in this case, it automatically was guessing that I was gonna extrude this whole face. So I'm gonna delete that selection and then specify that I want to do just the sketch. You can see the arrow here on the extrude is going outwards, but I want it to go the other direction. So I'm going to specify the distance to be a negative number. And then you can see it'll set the operation to cut, which means it'll cut into the model, right? So that's what we want. I'm going to press OK. And then we have this text cut in to our model. Again, when you take a screenshot of this, make sure I can see the text at the bottom. A lot of people send me like this, and then I'll be like, where's the text? And I won't know. Again, if you show me the timeline, you can see here, like there's a revolve and an extrude. So I'll kind of know that you've made some kind of extrusion, but you know, it might be helpful if you show me the bottom as well. But yeah, the last thing for this is just adding an appearance. Only on the ones that say that you need to. I think the hammer, you don't need to add it. I kind of forget which ones do and don't need it, but it will say in the rubric. So yeah, yeah, game piece. Does anyone have any questions about like the text function? No? All right, sweet. Okay, so that's basically all the demos I'm going to be doing today. It is almost 6:30 or 7:30, so we're just on time. Your homework for this week is to create a chair. I think it's just like making sure it has 4 legs and stuff like that. You can read the rubric, I kind of forget. But yeah, make something that resembles a chair, you know, preferably something that is nice looking to sit on. Again, everything that we learned today should allow you to create a chair. You can kind of think about some of these things and how you would do it. Like you can you could create 4 different extrusions here, or you can draw like 4 squares and then in one sketch and extrude them all at the same time, then creating like another sketch or platform here and all that stuff. So, you know, this is mostly like extrudes and fillets. So you should be able to make this. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. But yeah, that's basically it for today. I apologize for all the chaos. But I will see you next week in this classroom at 5:30. So yes, thank you so much. I'll see you next week. Also, make sure you fill out the assignments, not the assignments, the attendance forms if you haven't already. 'Cause yeah, free food.